Every pro in this module charges you for their time, and the question that decides whether each engagement returns value or burns cash is whether the time produces answers or produces clarifying questions that push the answer to the next call. The difference is almost entirely in what you bring to the call before it starts. This unit walks the prep structure that travels across every pro type, the questions that maximize every call regardless of which pro is on the other end, and the cadence discipline that prevents the "I'll call when something breaks" default. Every pro in this module charges for their time. The question is whether time produces answers or clarifying questions that push the answer to the next call. The difference is in what you bring. I've watched coaches walk into a CPA call with a vague question and walk out with 3 follow-up tasks instead of a decision. I've watched the same coach with the same CPA on the same scope of question run the call in 20 minutes flat because the prep was 3 lines and a hypothesis. Same pro, same hour, 2 different outcomes decided before the call started. The 4-part prep structure is identical across pro types, which is what makes it learnable once and reusable everywhere. Part 1, situation summary. Part 2, the question. Part 3, relevant documents. Part 4, your hypothesis. Same structure regardless of which pro you're meeting. The structure goes into a single 1-page document, sent in advance of the call, never delivered verbally as a context dump on the call itself. Whether the call is your CPA reviewing year-end moves, your attorney reviewing a non-compete clause, or your broker walking through E&O quotes, the structure stays the same. Part 1 is the situation summary. 1 paragraph, sent in advance. Current entity. Revenue level. The specific question this session is about. The paragraph sits at the top of the prep document and goes to the pro before the call. The pro should read this before the call and know what they're being asked. They're supposed to arrive ready to engage on the question, rather than ready to reestablish your context from scratch. If they didn't read it, and sometimes they didn't, ask for a 60-second recap from yourself before diving in. The paragraph is short on purpose. Precision in the question is the variable that determines the dollar return on the call. A vague opening, say, "What should I do about taxes?" produces a meandering 90-minute meter with no decision at the end of it. A surgical version sounds different. Given the LLC with S-corp election effective January 1st, projected net income of X, and proposed reasonable salary of Y, is the quarterly estimated payment on track to clear the safe harbor? That second framing is a 20-minute call with a real answer. The pro can act on the second one immediately. The first one only generates a list of inputs that should have already been inside the question. Documents go ahead of the call, pre-read by you with the relevant pages flagged. For a CPA conversation, that means last year's return, the year-to-date P&L, the tax reserve balance, and the deductible expense decisions you want made. For an attorney conversation, it means the single contract clause at issue, not the 40-page agreement around it. For a broker conversation, it means the current policy's declarations page if renewal is on the table. The discipline is the page noting itself. Handing across 40 pages of PDF and saying check it over produces a clarifying question call rather than an answer call. A hypothesis goes into the pre-call document, a guess at the answer the pro is being asked to confirm or correct. An example: I think the S-corp election ought to wait. on the theory that net income sits below the threshold where self-employment tax savings actually exceed compliance cost, but the threshold math may be wrong. That sentence signals two things. First, that you have done the thinking, and second, the exact piece of the calculation you are uncertain on. The pro now has something to react against, rather than build the answer from a blank page, which is where their time gets paid for. 3 questions that maximize every call, regardless of pro type, regardless of subject. What would change your answer? Surfaces embedded assumptions, so you know whether your situation matches the answer or whether you're one assumption away from a different recommendation. What risks am I not seeing? Invites the pro to flag what you didn't ask, which is where most of their value actually sits. What does your fee structure look like for follow-up questions? Ask before the call ends, because whether email follow-ups are included or billed separately changes how you use the relationship the rest of the year. Cadence closes the structure, and the rhythm gets set in advance rather than emerging from emergencies. Attorney, called in, never monthly. CPA, quarterly check-in, paid for in errors avoided. Bookkeeper, monthly close review or quarterly at the floor. Insurance broker, annually at renewal, except when practice structure shifts. Know the rhythm for each role the same way the calendar already knows your client sessions. The founder's boundary is set. 5 pros have been evaluated, 5 lines have been named. Module 4 picks up entity formation because the operator-buyer layer is in place and a structure can now exist.